In this episode of the IT Experts podcast, we are joined by the head of cyber essentials from IASME to give you an IASME security update. Welcome to the IT Experts podcast, the only podcast to help MSPs scale to 1 million, and if already there, get to 5 and go faster. At the end of the day, isn't it all about building a business that works for you rather than you for it? I hope you enjoy the show. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the IT Experts podcast. Today, we've got a really exciting and special guest. We've got Neil Furminger from IASME. He is the head of cyber essentials. Good morning, Neil. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Good morning, Ian. Yeah.
Great to have you here. We've had a couple of false starts on this due to Christmas, illnesses and all sorts of bits and pieces, but we're here now. And the purpose of today's show is to help MSPs understand properly, without any BS, with complete straight talking, why they need to take security seriously, why they need to understand all about Cyber Essentials Plus, what IASME do, where do they fit in this grand scheme of things, how do they work with any of the governmental bodies, anything like that. And Neil's going to explain all of this great stuff to us. And we've also agreed that Neil's going to come back every 6 months and we're going to do a bit of an update on what's going on with the program, what's going on in the world with threats and anything that he can share with us. I'm trying to prize out some of the juicy stuff, but he's been very careful on what he's going to say, and absolutely for all the right reasons as well. So welcome to the show, Neil. Do you want to just explain to everybody first, who are you, what do you do, and who do you help?
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Yeah, I'm Neil Furminger. So I'm the head of Cyber Essentials at IASME. I've been working on Cyber Essentials as an assessor and then moved to IASME for the last 9 years. Cyber Essentials is my working life for the vast majority of that time, but I did work at a certifying body before I joined IASME, so I've done assessments and CE plus assessments. But my background is in IT support, and I've had a 25 plus year career in IT support, working in various MSPs, large PLCs. I was an IT manager of a law firm for nearly 6 years. So I've got a very wide-ranging background to this that I use on a daily basis in my work around Cyber Essentials. As my role of head of Cyber Essentials, I look after the technical aspects of Cyber Essentials, not the day-to-day administration of it, but the technical side. So I work very closely with the NCSC, and I chair the technical working group that oversees the changes that happen on a regular basis, nearly on a 12-monthly basis, for Cyber Essentials about the updated requirements. I also head up the question set, so I know all about the changes to the question set, etc. So I'm very deep-rooted in this. Yes, and I work around the country speaking about Cyber Essentials, demystifying it, trying to talk about the misconceptions, etc. But I really do understand why we ask for these certain controls in Cyber Essentials, because I'm part of that decision process.
Lovely. And I think it's fair to say we have the authority in the room today. So what I'm actually going to do, Neil, next time we record our show, before the show, I'm going to pop out some polls onto LinkedIn and emails and everything to ask people, what do they want to know from you? Because there is only one of you and you are flying around the country. And I'm sure that as this episode pops up, this is more of an introductory episode into why do you need it? What is it all about? Why do we need it? Why does it keep changing? And why is it clunky? And what, all these sort of things we're going to try and cover off today. So just let's get back right the way back to basics. For people who may or may not know, who are IASME and what do they do? Where do they fit into the grand scheme of things?
So IASME is the delivery partner for the Cyber Essentials scheme on behalf of the NCSC. So we work very closely with the NCSC on Cyber Essentials, full stop. So 5 years ago, so it'd be 5 years in April, we became the sole delivery partner for Cyber Essentials. We manage the between 350 and 400 certifying bodies for the scheme, and nearly 1,000 assessors that mark and advise on Cyber Essentials throughout the UK. And one of my jobs in that part of my role is to manage the consistency of how the scheme is applied at a technical level. So we do an awful lot of work about guidance, etc. So your authority to get the correct information about Cyber Essentials is via the NCSC or IASME. When I mean we work with them very closely, we meet on an almost daily basis to talk about it. And the technical working group, which I chair, which I mentioned earlier, that meets once a week to discuss the changes and whether there's anything we need to consider for future updates. So we're very much, it's a partnership with the NCSC to deliver Cyber Essentials, which is crucial. But that also gives us a link in because there is a policy holder within government, and that is the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, and that they're abbreviated to DSIT. And we work with people there closely as well to deliver. So it's a partnership between the three bodies, and you'll see more on the advertising front. There is some new videos been released just before Christmas about Cyber Essentials, which will be used in collaboration between all three parties to promote Cyber Essentials across the UK.
Absolutely fantastic. So, Neil, the NCSC, that's the National Cybersecurity Centre, yeah? What is it that they do and where do they fit into the grand scheme of things?
They are the UK authority on cybersecurity, and they advise government, the Crown, etc. And they are, they're effectively the key holders to securing the UK.
Okay.
And their advice is recognised worldwide. They're part of what's called the Five Eyes. So the Five Eyes nations all work together to make the world securer from cybersecurity. So they work with the Americans, etc. But it's the public-facing arm, really, of the GCHQ.
Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
You must have some really interesting conversations that we're not going to talk about on this podcast on what the bad guys are doing. But I think what I just wanted to just share there was where you're the enabler to help MSPs with the tools around Cyber Essentials. And you're getting some really great, you're working with the authorities on what's going on and how to keep the UK safe. I think that is like the top of the bill for this one. We talk about MSPs being a number one target themselves because of obviously the amount of customers and endpoints that they get involved in and how they're connected to it. And yet it's still, and I'm not technical, it still absolutely blows my brain out how many MSPs have not got Cyber Essentials as a basic, let alone Cyber Essentials Plus, let alone the IASME Cyber Advisor, which we've done a podcast on before, and I'm sure we'll talk about today. Why, Neil? Why? Let's start with a different why question. Why are people just not taking this seriously? Why is this sometimes something that, is it like an insurance policy? You only really get scared about it when you crash your car or you need to claim, because this is, for you and I, it's a no-brainer, right? But why is this something that doesn't get the attention and the focus in these businesses that it should do?
I suppose if we go back in time a little bit, everything that we promote in Cyber Essentials has been around for a long time in IT systems. 20, 25, 30 years. Cyber Essentials is based on some core principles: good asset management, blocking your incoming ports on a firewall, applying security updates in a timely manner, using the principle of least privilege when you're talking about your user accounts. None of this is new. It's been around a long time. Yeah. It's been around, certainly, since the mid-90s when we had NT4 and stuff like that with Active Directory floating around. The controls in Cyber Essentials are based around preventing a commodity or a common cyber attack, okay? But the actual preventative measures to stop that are measures that any MSP should be putting in place because they are the key holders to all those IT systems they are managing on behalf of their clients. Now, they're managing them. They don't own those systems. They are owned by the companies. And it's up to them to apply the controls correctly. But we know with MSPs and IT services companies, there is no regulator. There is no real trade body. It's a very vendor-led industry.
Yes.
And you're working on the best practices promoted by those vendors. And there are very good articles by the vendors, but it's trying to amalgamate it all rather. So not every house, and this is one of the things that, or business, since the pandemic, there's a huge mixture and variety of vendors in use by different companies. Yeah. And what's the best practice for applying it across those different vendors, different solutions from Apple and Microsoft, etc.? Cyber Essentials tries to bring that all together, and I
Right.
suppose for the first time, really, we're telling you to do something, because that's what makes this accreditation or certificate different to, say, using ISO
Yeah.
27001.
Yeah.
Cyber Essentials is prescriptive in manner. You have to do this. You must do this. You must apply MFA on a cloud service. You must have a 12-character password if you've got no other protections in place. If you've got an 8-character password, you must have multi-factor authentication in place, or a password deny list, etc. And I think it's the first time, really, people are being told you must do this on
Yeah.
your IT systems, but everything is common sense. It's one of the questions that's often, we get lots and lots of pushback about Cyber Essentials, and because it's getting more common, that's getting less.
Yeah.
But in the early days when we took over 5 years ago, we got a lot of feedback, negative feedback about Cyber Essentials. But one of the things that seems to always be agreed, though, is when you actually, I ask the question back, so I get lots of questions put to me, and I go back to them and said, but do any of you disagree with the controls in Cyber Essentials? And nearly everybody comes back and says, no, it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
It's just doing it at scale. So you have different issues for a sole trader compared to a big multinational or a medium-sized company. So for a sole trader, it's they don't have the technical knowledge. The small companies don't have the technical resources. A medium company and large, it's because they've got to do it at scale. So one of the things we try to do with Cyber Essentials, whenever we recreate the requirements, we say, can this be applied to a single laptop? That is the foundations of the
Okay.
actual technical controls and moving it on. But coming back to your actual question, why aren't people doing it? Because they're not being told to do it.
Right.
It's a,
Right.
maybe the insurance company is telling them to do
Yeah.
it. We may need it for a supply chain
Yeah. Yeah.
requirement. You may need it for a government contract or a local authority
Yeah.
contract. Yeah, that's the main reason.
Okay.
But we are increasingly seeing people wanting to improve. And I think it's down to the fact that there are more and more conversations going on about cyber attacks and the stigma around
Yeah.
being attacked.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be a stigma about it. It's unfortunately we still live in the world that people believe they're too small.
Yeah.
Small companies are too small
Yeah.
to be attacked. That's wrong. Anybody can be attacked. It's when you're going to get attacked, not if you get
Not if.
attacked.
And
And that's that we're still breaking down all those misconceptions. Yeah, everybody connects to the internet on a daily basis, and that means the whole world can connect to you. So there's good guys you want to connect to, but equally there are bad guys wanting
yeah.
to connect back and try and run ransomwares or steal information, etc. And there are some basic things that can do to protect, and they're outlined in Cyber Essentials. But sometimes that means it's being told you've got to have a 12-character password, and that doesn't go down well in certain companies. There's a lot of users of systems, and MSPs are led by their vendors. We know that with
Yep.
the RMM tools,
Yep.
etc., etc. But it's trying to get those ingrained in there as best practices, and we'd love to see that Cyber Essentials is the best practices anybody should put in to start their cybersecurity journey.
Exactly. And I think it's for us, we're working with lots of MSPs. We've worked with hundreds over the years. And, we always doing the same thing. To stand out and to really put yourself in a business to build a lovely, profitable, automated, hands-off business
Mm.
means you need to have one that's going to do its best, I think is probably the most sensible phrase, to be prevented from being compromised, and your clients as well.
Yeah.
I've heard briefly, I don't know too many details about this Scottish charter. There's talk about regulation, and there's all these other things around. How does a business decide whether or not you're a good MSP? And when they go through Google and they go through the websites and Trustpilot and all these other bits and pieces, they don't really. We do see a lot of attraction on the ISO accreditation. So if you are ISO accredited 9,000, 27,000, whatever it might be, you will attract like-minded businesses who go, oh, if you've got, that means you're serious. And that means that you're serious about process and quality and time and controls and all of these type of good things. And we're now starting to see, while the education in the space, and some of it comes through the vendors, there's still too many shiny balls out there for my liking, but that's a whole nother podcast, is that if you have got CE plus, when people are hunting around for an MSP or they're looking for IT support, they're going to go, oh, what's this? What does that mean about you? What does that tell me about you? And although it's not an ISO, it's a good accreditation. So we've got three key things that we're talking about at the moment, isn't it? There's Cyber Essentials, there's Cyber Essentials Plus, and then there's the IASME Cyber Advisor. Can I just explain the difference between the three? Because they go in a bit of a level, don't they, in terms of ascension on expertise and protection?
So the Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus work together. So a Cyber Essentials certificate is where you do a self-assessment questionnaire, which is then validated and checked over by a Cyber Essentials assessor who is trained in understanding Cyber Essentials, has some experience in the real world, and they look at your answers and say, make a judgment on whether you're applying the controls of Cyber Essentials through your answers. Okay. The Cyber Essentials Plus then is the next level, which is where you get an audit. So there are a number of tests carried out by an assessor against a sample of devices in your IT estate. And depending on how many devices you have, the assessor will select a sample of devices to be tested to check whether you're separating your user account from your administrator account, whether you are applying MFA to your cloud services, whether you are patching within 14 days. So they do a vulnerability scan on your internal systems, and they do an external scan on your external IP addresses through your firewalls to make sure holes are blocked and that you haven't got any vulnerabilities exposed. And then they do a series of malware protection tests against your web browser or your email system, etc., and check that's all working correct. So there's that higher level of assurance because you've got somebody independent coming in to carry out an audit and actually saying, the CE Plus, we have actually put these controls in place. Where the cyber advisor comes in, so the cyber advisor is a different role within Cyber Essentials to a Cyber Essentials assessor.
Okay.
So assessor work is either a Cyber Essentials verified self-assessment assessor or they're a Cyber Essentials Plus assessor. So they go in and do the vulnerability scans. An advisor is somebody who can go and advise a company who's had no dealings with Cyber Essentials, certainly in the small sector and the micro sectors, size businesses, and go and advise and give implementation advice on how to set up their systems to be Cyber Essentials compliant. And that's actually, we're finding through the process of having assessors and advisors, the advisors is a higher level because they're the people who should know how to do it, but you've got to do it across multiple systems. And one of the things that is coming out through the exam and everything, and what we tried to achieve, which is different from other advisory schemes and IT qualifications, etc., we're trying to assess their soft skills, how they communicate these technical controls across, and that's the difficult thing. That's I think that's been discovered. That's a real skill, and so you become that higher level if you're an advisor, to be honest, and that's where I would encourage MSPs to go. I'd love to see a huge uptake in advisors with MSPs because they're actually doing the job. Go out, get yourself accredited, get yourself that NCSE badge, get yourself accredited that you are an advisor company, and you'll be on the database that we put on the NCSE website, and that will get built up. We're trying to get things like Crown Commercial Services, etc., to recognise the advisor and say you need to go and get your advice for Cyber Essentials from the trained advisor. Currently, we have about 100 advisors throughout the UK. But this is a real area. If the MSP market, we'd love to see it grow there because they're already doing the work. Get yourself accredited and show that you really can, and you'll win yourself work. Get involved in Cyber Essentials. There's a huge ecosystem around Cyber Essentials. There's always new developments going on with it. And it's got a good steady growth every year, 20% growth a year. So we've just celebrated issuing the 200,000th certificate in the scheme. So it took 7.5 years to get the first 100,000, 2.5 years to get the next 100,000. So this is something that's growing and growing all the time. And there are some entry points.
Yeah.
And for MSPs, advisors is a great route into being part of the scheme.
And that's how we're actually talking today. One of our clients, Neil, who is actually on episode 199 of the IT Experts podcast, telling you, shameless plug, how and why he's exactly going into the detail that Neil's just talked about there, about the benefits of becoming a cyber advisor, and also the lead generating opportunities, the education opportunities, and also the credibility opportunities that our Neil has got now with having that accreditation. So you've actually gone there. So from, I think, when we recorded that episode, which was probably around, this goes to show you how slow this is growing and therefore the opportunity. That episode was around the beginning of end of August, maybe last year. We're now in January. And at that time, it was 80 advisors.
Yeah.
So that's only 20 in 4 months.
Yeah.
And these people are seen as the pinnacle, the advisors, the authorities. And I think we've got 3 or 4 of our clients who are advisors, and they are just right at the front edge of everything that's going on, which is brilliant. Neil, got some really great information here. Now, we're going to catch up again in 6 months' time, and we're going to get some questions to put to you from our amazing MSPs. However, what's coming up? What's the new thing that's coming up in the world of CE Plus, and IASME?
So from April, we have a new set of requirements out and a new question set, and the code name for that is Willow. The IT world is fastly changing. We're fast moving away from username and passwords, and we are looking at multi-factor authentication, so a third step. But we are actually moving away from passwords entirely. So we have passwordless systems, which we've not recognised in Cyber Essentials before, and it's now written into the requirements that we recognise that. But we're actually moving towards the use of passkeys. We are seeing it from some of the major vendors. I noticed the other day that eBay are now asking you to set up your passkeys to log in. So that's using a device you have rather than something your password. If you've got something in your hand that's your passkey, which is your phone or a RFI key or whatever you want to call it, it's not something that can be guessed. A password can still be guessed, and it's still the most common way to be attacked is password guessing, and that's something we're trying to protect against. So Cyber Essentials needs to move on, and it's going to happen in a phased stage. So this year we're recognising a passwordless systems exist and that they are recognised and can be compliant for Cyber Essentials. Another area, because we haven't done any changes for 2 years because we wanted to let multi-factor authentication take a hold within the scheme. Another area that is changing is about patching vulnerabilities, updating vulnerabilities. It's not a case of just being a patch or an update anymore. It could be a config change. It could be running a script. It could be installing a feature. Now, that happened with Exchange earlier in 2024, where a critical vulnerability of 9.8 on the CVSS scoring version 3 for Microsoft Exchange, in order to fix that critical vulnerability, it said you need to install this feature if you haven't got it installed. So we're trying to protect from the critical and high vulnerabilities in Cyber Essentials, and we've got to recognise that it's gone beyond just running a patch or an update nowadays. You may need to do a registry fix. So we've changed the wording, and we now talk about vulnerability fixes need to be remediated within 14 days of being released by the vendor. We can't get away from the fact that something's got a critical vulnerability on it. It needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
We can't. Unfortunately, we have people say, well, it's not a patch or an update, so we're not going to apply it. But that's not fixing the critical vulnerability for the applicant, is it? And that's the most important thing. So they're the major changes. In CE+, there's some changes. It affects the assessors more, but it's about they need to prove that the scope that is determined in the self-assessment is correct and what they are auditing against when they come to do the CE+ test. They need to test that there's segregation, the correct form of segregation in place between in-scope networks and outer-scope networks, and they're checking that the sample's correct. So that's the changes, really. If by doing it every 12 months, they're stepped changes, 3 years ago, we put in some big changes. That was caused by the pandemic, and it took a long time, and it was seen as a very major change to the scheme. They were worthwhile changes because it was all about multi-factor authentication, but we do it in a more stepped way
Yeah.
now. So
Okay.
there'll be smaller changes, but they're still significant in their own way. So that's what's coming. But the roadmap for Cyber Essentials is to get that you're using passkeys over 2-3 years. I'm not sure what the timeline is, but that's the discussions going on.
Okay.
And it's discussion you will see, and articles come from the NCSE on a regular basis, because it's very much UK policy to move to using passkeys as the default method of authentication.
So those passkeys then, is that something that you'll generate yourself, or will that be something that will be generated by a system, or what? How's that different to a password?
There's many ways of it happening at the moment, but you'll see a lot of vendors, and I see a lot of cloud services now starting to say you log in on with a passkey. I see Google use it an awful lot now. So basically, you're not using a password directly to log in. You're using a phone or a code generated
Right.
on it, or you're just saying, yes, it's me on there. So that's passkey. So there's normally something, there's some certificate in the background, or public key, private key infrastructure that they've set up to log in. So it's something that can't be guessed by an attacker.
Right.
That's why the move to the passkey is, it makes you a hell of a lot more secure. We can all live behind the stat from Microsoft that they published years ago. By employing MFA on a Microsoft system, you're 99.9% more secure than if you don't. There are lots of
Yeah.
stats to prove the new authentication methods are far more effective.
Lovely. That's great. Neil, it's been a very insightful show, interesting into what's going on, interesting into continue the conversation. I
Yeah.
think as we move forwards with these regular shows, it'd be great to get into maybe some of the things that people can do to make life easier, people can do to help them get through the accreditations if they're struggling to do that, or even maybe to get buy-in from their clients or even from other members in the team, because a lot of the time we do talk about been a bit of a marketing exercise, and you need to educate, and we need to educate people on why they need this, rather than sit there and talking to them about lessons learned after they've been compromised and you've spent whole of your Christmas break trying to get all your clients' data back, which nobody wants to be doing. Any final remarks, final comments for you on this one before we wrap the show up?
I think that's you just mentioned the really important word. It's not about a sales thing, Cyber Essentials, it's education and getting people to put the controls in place. That's the main. I'm not a salesperson by any. I feel I'm an educator on this, and I'm an educator to everybody who's involved in Cyber Essentials about wider technical controls. And I'd love to talk about that on the part that MSPs could play in actually securing their clients by adopting it within their support services. It's really important to me. I've seen it working in the MSP industry and having created a certifying body, how it can be of benefit as a service to the MSPs, but also to the clients. And that's ultimately what this is all about, protecting applicants and clients who adopt the controls from a common cyber attack. And that's the most important element here. And that's what we've all got a part to play in it. Everybody who's involved in Cyber Essentials, everybody who's involved in the IT services support industry have all got a part to play in securing their clients and applicants for the scheme.
Lovely stuff.
Yeah.
You might be careful how you answer this next question, Neil. Yeah. If anybody wants to continue a conversation and ask you a question, maybe, how do they do that? And what I don't want you to do is just give the world your email address, and then you get bombarded with it. But if people want to have a chat, they've got a query, they need some help, and they need some support, what do they do?
Actually, I do give out my email address.
Fantastic.
That's one of the things we are at IASME. We want to be approachable. We want to hear people's feedback. We want that. So we give out our email addresses. That's not a problem. And it's neil.furminger@iasme.co.uk. I may not answer all of them. What I may do is pass it on to our skilled team of technical support we've got. So we have a technical support team for Cyber Essentials, and we can answer any of your questions. So we, like everybody, the scheme's grown. IASME has grown significantly over the last 5 years. So we have these support mechanisms in the background, but I'm approachable. Drop me an email. if I'm not around, it's info@iasme.co.uk, and somebody will pick up your query. We're here to be approachable. If we didn't make ourselves approachable, we're not going to solve this big problem, and that's making the UK more secure.
Exactly.
And it's really important to us at IASME. That's what we want to do. So
we've gone full circle on that. It's just about keeping everybody in the UK secure.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for your time, Neil. I know you're doing a fair chunk of podcasts, so I appreciate your time, and we did get this one done. If anybody's got any questions, either email Neil, drop us a message. We'll include the question in the next podcast, in the next update we'll do. In the meantime, you look after yourself. You take care. Keep safe, and we'll keep on the warpath, as it would be. Look forward to seeing you soon. Cheers, Neil.
Thank you, Ian. Cheers.
Just before you go, and if you're curious about how this episode links with the ability to scale your MSP to $1 million, or if you're already there, accelerate to 5, then we want to invite you to come and take the MSP Mastery Quiz. And in just 3 minutes, you're going to get a 360-degree scan of your business, where you can identify the 1 or 2 tactics that can help you find more time, engage and align your people, and help generate more leads in your MSP. It's really simple. Just click on the link in the show notes. And if you have enjoyed this episode, we'd love to get some feedback from you by means of a rating review on Spotify or iTunes or your podcast platform of choice. We really appreciate every single one of them. Now you can go and enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to catching up and connecting with you soon. All the best now.